The series begins in 1995, where there was a young guy named Kung-sun. So, at that time, he was running away from a mysterious man while carrying something shiny in his bag. Fast forward to 2022, there's this guy named Yu Dong-ju. He's a writer who's been struggling to publish his book for a while. To live his life, he works part-time as a delivery guy. One rainy day, he's driving and chatting on the phone when suddenly, out of nowhere, he hits Kang-san, who appears in front of his car. There, Dong-ju stops the car right away and sees Kang-san knocked out in the middle of the road. Then he rushes him to the hospital. At the hospital, a doctor named Lee Soo-han and her team try to help Kang-san. Sadly, they can't save him, and they ask who he is. Dong-ju has no idea, and even the police detective, Pug Yun-soo, can't figure out who Kang-san is. Soo-yeon then tells them that Kang-san passed away at 11:33 p.m. After everyone had left, Dong-ju was still waiting for Kang-san. Suddenly, he heard a noise, and when he went to check, he was surprised to see Kang-san, who had been declared dead, alive again. At the police station, Dong-ju told the story of how he accidentally hit Kang-san, who appeared out of nowhere during a lightning flash. However, Hyun-soo didn't believe his story. She also asked about Kang-san's belongings, and Dong-ju said he didn't find anything. Later, when Dong-ju got home and was about to leave his car, he realized that Kang-san's backpack was still in his car. Inside the backpack, he found some items, including a novel with a photo tucked inside. Curious, he read the manuscript of the novel titled God is Dead and tried to find information about the author. Unfortunately, he couldn't find anything, even though he thought the author was a genius. Meanwhile, there was this guy named Shin Kyung-tol, who's known for making movies. He was sitting in a car with his hands tied up and his mouth taped shut. Not long after, a strange guy wearing gloves came along. He removed the tape from Kyung-tol's mouth and shoved a bottle into his mouth. Then, the mysterious guy told the car to drive into a lake with Kyung-tol still inside. Once that was done, the mysterious man took off his gloves and noticed a weird mark on his hand. At the hospital, a doctor who was supposed to check on a guy named Kang-san got a big surprise. Instead of finding Kang-san in his bed, he found him holding the hand of an elderly lady in another ward. The doctor asked Kang-san what he was up to, but before he could answer, he suddenly passed out and woke up again. The next day, at Dong-ju's place, he noticed that his best buddy, Chong Yong-dae, who's a cop, had gone through the novel manuscript he found in Kang-san's bag. Yong-dae thought that Dong-ju had written it, but just when Dong-ju was about to explain, Yong-dae kept talking and suggested they publish the manuscript. Meanwhile, at a publishing company, I'm Yong-sok, the guy who's the son of a big-shot Korean company, Tagung Group, and also runs the publishing company, announced a writing contest for anyone who wanted to publish his book. Meanwhile, Dong-ju was busy copying that manuscript he found. At that time, he was on his way to meet Myung-seok, who used to be his classmate back when they studied Korean literature together. However, Dong-ju didn't really like dealing with Myung-seok, who was a bit arrogant. But Dong-ju had to keep things friendly with him because he borrowed money from the publishing company's boss to help his mom out, who had some legal trouble after getting caught drunk driving. Myung-seok also kept asking when Dong-ju would pay him back, and Dong-ju promised he'd do it once he won the writing contest. Myung-seok then insulted Dong-ju by saying he wouldn't win the contest. This really got on Dong-ju's nerves, so he pulled out a copy of the manuscript he found and asked Myung-seok to take a look. Myung-seok just pushed it away with his foot and said he'd read it if he felt like it. Getting more annoyed, Dong-ju asked Myung-seok to read just 2 pages before he stormed out of his room. Soon after, Dong-ju and Hyun-soo met up with Young-suk, who was taking care of Kang-san. There, she shared that Kang-san's condition was like a miracle because he survived an accident without injuries, even after being without oxygen for 20 minutes. After the meeting, Hyun-soo told Dong-ju that the police still didn't know who Kang-san was. Later, when Dong-ju went to Kang-san's room, Myung-seok contacted him to confirm if he was the author of a novel manuscript called God is Dead. However, Dong-ju, still a bit annoyed, admitted that he wrote it. Surprisingly, Myung-seok, who had read the manuscript, pressured him to sign a contract with his company because he wanted to publish it. A few months later, Dong-ju's manuscript was published and started appearing in bookstores. Myung-seok even got him an apartment because the novel did so well. At that time, Yongda was there to help Dong-ju move into his new place. Meanwhile, the mysterious guy who had drowned Jeong-chol was spotted in a bookstore reading a novel written by Dong-ju. On the other hand, the police were recovering Jeong-chol's car, which had been sunk in Sopyeon Lake. Hyun-soo, who was part of the operation, examined a bottle with small pieces of wood taken from Jeong-chol's mouth. Her colleague, Kang Jae-soo, reported to team leader that he couldn't identify the body in the car, but believed it was Jeong-chol. Back at the office, ordered Jae-soo and Hyun-soo to check the surveillance cameras around the scene and track Jeong-chol's whereabouts on the day he went missing. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Kang-san finally woke up, and Soo-yeon and the others hurried to check on him. There, Soo-yeon told Kang-san that he had been in treatment for 2 months following a car accident. When she asked for his name, he couldn't remember anything and mentioned hearing strange sounds and seeing odd images. She thought it was because of the accident and tried to comfort him, saying he would get better. Weirdly, Kang-san suddenly had a strange image of Soo-yeon doing something suspicious with an IV tube. Shortly after she left the room, Kang-san heard voices from people in another room asking for help, which made him cover his ears. Around the same time, Dong-ju got the news about Kang-san's condition and rushed to the hospital, wondering how to talk to him about the stolen novel manuscript. Meanwhile, Kang-san kept hearing strange sounds, so he hid under the blanket. At that time, Dong-ju spotted him and tried to approach, but Kang-san suddenly vanished. Confused, Dong-ju left the room, only to spot Kang-san entering another room. Surprisingly, Kang-san knew the name of the woman taking care of his dying mother, and he mentioned that her mother had a message to convey. Just before he could share it, a man showed up and asked who Kang-san was. Without hesitation, Kang-san pushed the man out of the room. He then told the woman that her mother didn't want her to be sad about her passing and bid her a final farewell. After returning to his room, Dong-ju met Kang-san and apologized for the accident. There, Kang-san held Dong-ju's hand, but Dong-ju couldn't quite grasp what was going on in the young man's mind. Soon after, the doctor rushed into the room of the patient Kang-san had mentioned earlier, as she had passed away. Dong-ju wondered how Kang-san knew about the old woman's death. At that moment, Kang-san seemed to ignore the question and asked about his backpack. Meanwhile, a few nurses recognized Dong-ju as the writer and asked for a photo with him. In that moment, he tried to avoid the nurses by inviting Kang-san into the treatment room. There, Kang-san asked if Dong-ju found his ID card in the backpack because he only remembered being chased by a man in the rain. Dong-ju replied that he didn't find any identification. The next day, a mysterious guy managed to sneak into Dong-ju's house and rummaged through Kang-san's bag, searching it thoroughly. Outside the hospital, Soo-yeon noticed a patient who was a prisoner and had just arrived due to an injury. Meanwhile, Kang-san suddenly became quiet and saw smoke coming from his mouth before collapsing. This made Dong-ju rush out to get a doctor, but when they returned to check on Kang-san, turns out he was in Soo-yeon's study, looking at something concerning. Soon after, Kang-san hurried out, and Dong-ju, seeing this, followed and asked why he had disappeared. Hearing that, Kang-san didn't seem to know why but mentioned hearing screams and cries from the hospital patients. Dong-ju started to suspect that Kang-san might have gained superpowers after the earlier car accident. Kang-san then asked for his backpack, but when they got back home, Dong-ju couldn't find it and only found the manuscript of the novel God is Dead with a message from Kai that said light or darkness. The next day, Hyun-soo explained to her teammates how the murder of Jeong-chol and the death of Shin at the crime scene were similar to the unsolved case of John Do-yeon, which had been going on for 2 years. She mentioned that both Jeong-chol and Do-hyun had pieces of wood in their mouths, leading her to suspect that the same person committed these crimes. Besides that, Hyun-soo shared a photo found in Do-hyun's pocket, believed to be left by the perpetrator. So in the photo, it featured Lee Ta-mun, the Ta-gung group leader with drug scandals, along with Chief Prosecutor Jo Jong-nam, the late Jong Chol, and Na Sung-woo, a professor from a prestigious family. They were known to have regular meetings at the upscale Fortuna Cafe owned by their friend Kang Hae-gyong. As for Jong Chol's last encounters before his death, it was with Ta-man and Jong-nam. Then, Hyun-soo's colleague, Lee Byung-won, added that Sang-woo had gone missing about 7 years ago, and there might be 3 victims of murder whose culprits remained unknown. The scene then switched to Myung-seok, who called Dong-ju to thank him for the fantastic marketing that turned Dong-ju's novel into a bestseller. However, Dong-ju didn't want to chat and hung up the phone. Then, he hurried to the hospital and met Kang-san. When Dong-ju mentioned that Kang-san's backpack was missing, he asked what was inside it. Dong-ju only mentioned some writing stuff and stones. Meanwhile, Soo-yan was keeping an eye on the prisoners in the ward. On the other hand, Hyun-soo and Byung-man went to Fortuna Cafe to investigate. They learned that Jong Chol had been there 2 months ago and had a driver take him home when he was drunk. Surprisingly, the driver had scars similar to those of the murderer. Hae-gyong, who they questioned, said she would provide the driver's contact number. At the same time, Ta-man in his office instructed his secretary, Kim Huno, to look into Dong-ju. Now, back to Soo-yin, who seemed ready to confront a prisoner patient. Kang-san, who saw something, teleported to the treatment room and stopped Soo-yan's actions by holding her hand and the patient. At that time, Kang-san could see an image of Soo-yan's husband, who had just finished shopping with their daughter and was heading to the car. Soo-yan's husband tried to confront a man urinating in the parking lot, but things went wrong, and the man stabbed him, causing his death. This left Soo-yan hysterical. Kang-san then transferred Soo-yan's sadness to the patient who had committed the stabbing, leading the perpetrator to apologize. Shortly after that, the police rushed in because they heard the patient screaming. At that time, Soo-yan had a tube with poison in it, but she quickly hid it. She told Kang-san to leave the room. Then, they both sat in the hospital corridor, and Soo-yan wondered how Kang-san could understand her memories. Hearing that, Kang-san didn't know either. He couldn't explain where he got that power. Then, Soo-yan thanked him for saving her. Meanwhile, at home, Dong-ju got a call from a mysterious guy named Kai on a public phone. Kai said that Dong-ju's book shouldn't be published. Dong-ju was curious about this caller. Then he asked Young-dae to set up a camera at his house and went to the public phone location where Kai had called from last night. Unfortunately, he couldn't find the camera, so he couldn't figure out who the mysterious caller was. The next day in the hospital, the nurse gave Kang-san his stuff, and he only had one shoe left. When he touched the shoe, he had a flashback of someone giving it to him. Meanwhile, at the police station, Hyun-soo couldn't find out who the driver was that took Jong Chol when he was drunk because the driver, Kai, had a mask on. She thought maybe Kai was connected to the Fortuna Cafe employees and could be involved in the crime. Then Jae-soo reported that both victims had wood pieces from the same material on them. Also, Hyun-soo found a novel called God is Dead on her desk. Later, Hyun-soo went to the hospital to meet Kang-san and gave him her business card. There, Kang-san suddenly saw a sad memory of a colleague who died in a car crash during their mission. Not long after, Dong-ju arrived and Hyun-soo told him that there were no missing person reports for Kang-san. After she left, Kang-san told Dong-ju that he was allowed to stay with him because he didn't feel comfortable around him. After that, Dong-ju invited Kang-san to visit the accident scene in the hope that he would remember something about it. On the way there, Kang-san was amazed by the tall buildings. When they reached the accident site, it felt both familiar and strange to him because in his memory, it was a residential area. Although Dong-ju was still confused about where Kang-san came from, he was grateful that the young man he accidentally hit was okay. On their way back to the hospital, Kang-san spotted a boy named Kim across the street and jumped out of the car to follow him. Seeing that, Dong-ju hurried to find a parking spot and then chased Kang-san into an alley. There, Kang-san stood in front of a wall covered in graffiti. When he touched one of the drawings, he suddenly teleported into a room where Kim was locked up, looking weak and covered in bruises. At that time, Kang-san tried to open the door, recalling memories of himself and his older brother being locked up and hurt in the past. Outside, Dong-ju heard Kang-san's voice calling for help, so he searched for a house with a red mailbox like the one on the wall. Meanwhile, Kang-san tried to wake Kim and had a flash of when Kim's mother left him alone in the room with very little food. Seeing that, Kang-san became furious, and in his anger, he tried to unlock the door with his mind. Suddenly, Kim's mother, named Jung, opened the door, and Kang-san, unable to control his anger, started strangling her. Meanwhile, Dong-ju finally located the house where Kim was kept and yelled for Kang-san. Hearing Dong-ju's voice, Kang-san snapped out of it and let go of Jung's neck. When Dong-ju entered, he quickly asked Kang-san to take Kim to the hospital. After Su-yeon treated Kim, Dong-ju noticed a wound on Kang-san's back as he was changing clothes. He mentioned it to Su-yeon, and she wondered if Kang-san had been abused since childhood, which might explain why his family didn't look for him. A little while later, Dong-ju tried to comfort Kang-san, who was still troubled by the incident with Jung, by inviting him to come home the next day. Meanwhile, at the shop where Dong-ju's mother, Young-suk, worked, Kai stopped by and congratulated Dong-ju on becoming a best-selling author. When he turned to Dong-ju, who was at home, he also seemed to have a scar on his back, just like Kang-san. The following day, while Kang-san was waiting for Dong-ju to pick him up at the hospital, he met a woman named Chee-yu-jong. She told that Kang-san looked like someone she knew, but she realized it couldn't be the case since the people she knew should be the same age as her. On the flip side, Hyun-soo showed up at Dong-ju's house and asked why he sent his novel to her. This surprised Dong-ju, and he insisted that he never sent it. Then she questioned if he had really written the novel because it contained many details that matched real-life events, especially the Sopyeong Lake murder case. It seemed like Dong-ju had first-hand knowledge of the murder. There, Dong-ju explained that the events in the novel could happen in the real world, but Hyun-soo remained suspicious and asked where he was on September 19 after 11 p.m. Dong-ju reminded her that they were in the hospital emergency room due to Kang-san's car accident. Hearing that, Hyun-soo fell silent and, before leaving, mentioned a homeless man found dead at Sopyeong Lake 27 years ago, the same year the novel's background story was set. The only difference was that the novel suggested the wrong person was framed for the murder. After she left, Dong-ju immediately started searching for information about the Sopyeong Lake murder. He found an article about the homeless man's murder 27 years ago and Jeong Chol's recent death at the lake. After that, Dong-ju also read his own novel, which described the abuse of a homeless man by 3 teenage boys, with another teen recording the incident. After the man was badly injured, they dragged him to the lake. Then, another teenage boy tried to intervene, but sadly, he was also attacked by another group of criminals. At the same time, there was a girl who saw everything and was terrified, crying. And as for the homeless man, he was badly beaten and bruised, trying to escape, but he was struck with a stone again until he died. While Dong-ju finished reading this scene in the novel, he suddenly remembered the photo he had found in the manuscript. He decided to go to Sopyeong Lake, believing in Hyun-soo's earlier words. At the hospital, Woo-jong was still with Kang-san and asked about his father, whom she might have known. However, Kang-san explained that he had lost his memory due to a car accident. Before leaving, Woo-jong gave him a business card. Strangely, when he took the card, Kang-san didn't experience any visions of her, just like what happened with Dong-ju. Not long after that, Dong-ju arrived to pick up Kang-san from the hospital and even bought him a cell phone. When Dong-ju returned to the shop to get some items he had left behind, a high school girl named Kim Yeon, he accidentally bumped into Kang-san, who started following her. At that time, Dong-ju didn't see Kang-san outside the shop and tried to call him, but Kang-san didn't answer and continued to follow Yinki. This made her uncomfortable, so she went into a police station. Meanwhile, Dong-ju didn't rush to find Kang-san after he had to visit the publisher's office to meet with Myung-seok. They discussed the serious accusation of plagiarism because the storyline in Dong-ju's novel was exactly the same as Zhang Chao's film script, which focused on the murder of a homeless person at the lake. Dong Zhu got really upset when he heard this and refused to show the date when he had written the novel file. Eventually, he left, leaving Myung Seok, who then instructed his team to work on the royalty distribution with Zhang Chao's production company. In the parking lot, Dong Zhu received a call from Kang San, who told him that he was at the police station. After ending the call with Dong Zhu, Kang San tried to connect with Yan He using his mind. He told her that he had been following her because he was worried she might do something bad. He told her not to let her school grades bring her down. Yan He then confessed that she felt sad thinking about her disappointed parents and compared herself to her older brother, who always received praise from them. Because of this, she didn't want to lead a life that didn't make her happy. Hearing that, Kang San encouraged her to keep living for herself because death was a much scarier option. A police officer who saw Yan He talking to herself was surprised and asked how she was doing. She quickly replied that she was fine and introduced Kang San as her friend. Before leaving, she apologized to the police officer and asked Kang San to go. Shortly after, Dong Zhu picked up Kang San and Yan He requested Kang San's phone number, saying she would contact him. At Taegong High School, a young man starts digging into things. He checks the school yearbook and spots photos of Zhongnam and some others. He also sees a picture of a student called Yi Hanyi, which makes him think he met this person before at Sopyeong Lake to discuss some case. Soon after, Byung Man talks to one of the teachers about Haenul, and the teacher says Haenul was a smart kid, but sadly, he passed away. Later, Dong Zhu tells Kang San to crash on the sofa for the night because his bed won't be there until tomorrow. While Kang San is snoozing, Dong Zhu checks his CCTV to find out who snuck into his house and swiped Kang San's backpack. But he can't figure out who it was because the person was wearing a mask and messed with the cameras. Meanwhile, at Fortuna Cafe, Hai Kyung is reading a novel written by Dong Zhu when Ta Man shows up. They chat about video cassettes, even though the deadline for dealing with the cassette-related case has already passed. Then Ta Man also warns Hai Kyung not to talk about it too openly. The next day, Hai and Soo headed to the police station, looking like she was giving Byung Man the old case file about a murder that happened at Sopyeong Lake 27 years ago. She asked Byung Jong-yi, the detective who handled the case, if he had arrested the wrong person as the perpetrator. Byung Man then told her that he had seen Jong-il interrogating a man named No Myung Nam, who was suspected of being the murderer. Back then, Byung Man felt that Myung Nam wasn't the real culprit, but he didn't do anything to prove it because he didn't want to lose his job. His daughter was very sick with heart disease, and he needed to pay for her treatment. At that time, Jong-il gave him some money for his daughter's treatment, so Byung Man allowed Myung Nam to be considered a suspect, and the case was sent to the prosecutor's office. Hai Soo also asked about Haenul, which surprised Byung Man. He told her that Haenul was most likely dead. She then revealed that she believed the current series of murders started with a similar case 27 years ago. The next day, Dong Zhu contacted Yang Dae to discuss the old homeless murder case. Yang Dae advised Dong Zhu to go to Chonghae High School, which was near Sopyeong Lake. Soon after that, Dong Zhu went to the school and met with the principal. The principal asked him to wait in his office while he went to the restroom. While waiting, Dong Zhu looked at some photos and spotted a student who looked like Kang San. The student was wearing white sneakers, and the photo was taken on September 29, 1995. Meanwhile, Kang San was at home, playing around with his cell phone when he looked at a photo of Dong Zhu's family. Suddenly, he thought he saw Yu Chun-song, Dong Zhu's dad, in the picture. At that time, he tried to remember and recalled a moment when they were both at a bookstore. Turns out, Chan Sung had told Kang San to leave through the back door and gave him a backpack when several police officers showed up. He also warned Kang San not to trust anyone and not to go to the orphanage. In the present, Hai Soo stood outside Dong Zhu's house and Kang San held his head, feeling unwell. His powers started to make objects vibrate. Shortly after, Hai Soo heard a noise from inside and quickly called Dong Zhu for the entrance code to check on Kang San. Just then, Kang-san opened the door, revealing a messy house. He contacted Dong-ju, asking about Chan-sung and urgently asking him to come home. Then, Hyun-soo asked about the mess, and Kang-san admitted it was his doing due to his powers. Unfortunately, she didn't believe him. At school, Dong-ju asked the principal about a young man resembling Kang-san. The principal provided Kang-san's name and explained that he and his older brother had lived in a church-run orphanage but had gone missing. While at school, Kang-san made friends with Chang-in, who was a teacher there. Not long after, Dong-jun met Chang-in, who shared a troubling story about Kang-san. It turned out Kang-san had gone to the police station when his older brother disappeared, but sadly, the police officers weren't willing to help. They even kicked Kang-san out of the station. That day marked the last time Chang-in saw his friend, who had scars on his back, likely from abuse. After hearing that info, Dong-ju got curious about Kang-san's older brother. While pointing at the sky, Chang-in revealed that Kang-san's brother was named Hae-nyul. After meeting with Chang-in, Dong-ju walked towards his car, lost in thought about Hae-nyul, until he realized that Kang was actually Kang-san's older brother. Meanwhile, in Jong-il's office, Byung-man talked about Hae-nyul from 27 years ago. He mentioned meeting him and discussing a video related to the murder case at Sopyeon Lake. Jong-il wondered why Byung-man was bringing up a closed case, and he simply said that the case wasn't entirely resolved. The following day at the police station, Hyun-soo received a tip about a photo of Myung-nam, who had been released from custody. Then, she forwarded a novel written by Dong-ju to her colleagues. Sometime later, Byung-man visited Myung-nam to ask about a murder case from 2 years ago involving Do-hyun. However, Myung-nam remained silent and decided to leave in his car. Not far from there, Kai observed Byung-man as he asked a colleague to track Myung-nam's car and phone. Back at home, Dong-ju realized that the stories in his novel were true accounts of Kai and Hae-nyul witnessing Ta-man, Jong-nam, Jong-chol, and Sang-woo dying at Sopyeon Lake. Soon after, Dong-ju contacted Kang-san, who was at the train station, to meet someone alone. At that time, Kang-san takes money from Dong-ju's piggy bank and uses his cell phone for directions. He promised to repay Dong-ju later. After ending the call, Dong-ju sent a message to Kai through his book club, hoping to find him before the police discovered Kai's true identity. Back with Byung-man and Hyun-soo, they shared with Oh that the murder case from 27 years ago had been manipulated to make it look like revenge for the deaths of directors Jong-chol and Do-hyun. There, Byung-man added that Jong-il, who is now part of the council, had manipulated and hiding the case at the request of some powerful individuals. So, there was a high chance that Myung-nam wasn't the real murderer. They believed that the case from 27 years ago held the key to solving Jong-chol and Do-hyun's cases. After knowing that, Byung-man asked Oh for help in investigating this matter. On the other hand, in an office, Myung-seok informed Dong-ju that his older brother, Ta-man, the head of Taegung Group, wanted to meet Dong-ju at Fortuna Cafe. Meanwhile, Kang-san got in touch with Woo-jong to let her know he was near the church. Suddenly, he felt dizzy, recalling a priest with a Bible hitting them in a church. Without realizing it, he teleported to Sopyeon Lake, startling a man who saw him and ran away in fear. At that time, Kang-san was puzzled about how he ended up there and seemed to shed tears, feeling sadness at that place. From a distance, another man recorded the incident where Kang-san suddenly shows up at the lake. The following day at the police station, Hyun-soo explained to her team about Ta-man and his wealthy friends, urging Do-hyun to give false testimony regarding the homeless deaths to frame Myung-nam as the perpetrator. Meanwhile, Hae-nyul, who was a high school friend of Ta-man and the only witness to the incident, mysteriously disappeared, raising suspicions to everyone. On the other hand, after Myung-nam was released from prison 2 years ago after serving a 25-year sentence, he intentionally sent a book written by Dong-ju. The book contained a storyline about the Sopyeon Lake murder, wanting to reveal the truth that had been hidden for 27 years. Soon after, Oh shows up feeling annoyed upon hearing this, as Hyun-soo's explanation was based on a novel. However, Byung-man claimed he had witnessed Jong-il beating Myung-nam to make him confess to being the perpetrator. After hearing that, Oh instructed Jae-soo to check the CCTV and find Myung-nam's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Dong-ju was driving his car while searching for Kang-san until he found him at Sopyeong Lake. Kang-san explained that he had teleported to the place, which felt strangely familiar. Although he was starting to recall his past, his memories felt disconnected. Then, Kang-san also mentioned Chan Seong, who had given him a backpack and a message on the day of his accident. He found it crazy that he could meet Chan Seong, who was supposed to be dead. At the police station, Hyun-soo rushed to inform her colleagues about Myung-nam kidnapping Jong-il's daughter, Byun Hen-young. According to the information they received, Myung-nam demanded that Jong-il confess to the media about the torture he did to Myung-nam in the past, forcing him to confess as a suspect in the Sopyeong Lake murder. This confession had to be broadcast on TV at 9 p.m. if Jong-il wanted his daughter to be safe. Hyun-soo also mentioned that it would be tough to locate Hae-young in such a short time. Byung-man, who was already at Jong-il's house, asked Jae-soo to seek help from another team in finding Hae-young's whereabouts. However, Jong-il insisted that his daughter's kidnapping should not be made public, and he even threatened to resign if this happened. Meanwhile, Jong-il's wife, Young-san, told her husband to follow Myung-nam's request. However, Jong-il was furious, nearly beating his wife, and he refused to negotiate with criminals. The next day, Dong-ju and Kang-san went to a place where Chung Seong used to have his bookstore. But the bookstore was gone because they were building something new there. Shortly after, Dong-ju told Kang-san to forget about his past and start fresh. He said he'd help him become a new person. But Kang-san said no. He wanted to find his older brother and learn about his past so he could have a peaceful life. Just when Kang-san was about to leave, something crazy happened. He almost got hit by a motorbike, and a woman dropped her scarf. When he picked up the scarf, he saw that the woman was about to get hit by someone else. It freaked him out, so he asked Dong-ju to go after the woman. Soon after, they followed her to a building, and Dong-ju called Yang-da. Then they both went inside the old building. When they turned on the lights, they saw two people, Myung-nam and Hae-young, both looking pretty beat up and watching TV. Kang-san figured out that Myung-nam didn't hurt Hae-young, so he asked her who did it. But she didn't answer. Instead, she watched the 9 p.m. news on TV about her father confessing to something, and she smirked sarcastically. Meanwhile, at his house, Jong-il got hit him on the head by his wife. It was so bad that they had to call an ambulance. Now let's talk about Kang-san. He and the others were trying to get some information from someone, but she wouldn't say anything. So they decided to leave. But then Kang-san went back to return Hae-young's scarf, and Yang-da went back on patrol. There, Kang-san asked her to talk and wondered if Jong-il had hurt her. She said she wanted revenge on him because she believed he didn't deserve to live. Meanwhile, the ambulance arrived to take the injured Jong-il away. At that moment, Yang-san was praying and holding a cross. Byung-man noticed that the cross was the same as a piece of wood found on the bodies of Do-hyun and Jong-chol, so he took it. Now, let's switch to Myung-nam. He was talking to Dong-ju, who he thought knew him. There, Myung-nam claimed he never killed anyone and felt like he was being framed to go back to prison. Dong-ju was confused because he didn't know Myung-nam. Myung-nam asked how Dong-ju could write his novel without knowing about him. Dong-ju said his novel couldn't be evidence of a murder case, and Myung-nam mentioned a videotape that recorded the murder case and asked if Dong-ju had watched it. Meanwhile, on the road, Yang-da had a picture of Myung-nam, who was wanted for kidnapping Hae-young. He quickly called other police officers for help. Back at the old building, Dong-ju asked Myung-nam to forget about the past and live in the present because the case was already closed. But Myung-nam couldn't accept it, and before things got worse, Kang-san stepped in and held their arms. Kang-san remembered a moment when Myung-nam acted like he was ASAP after witnessing a homeless man being beaten to death. Then there was a flashback. Myung-nam seemed to have been tortured by Jong-il to confess to being the killer of the homeless man. Another flashback showed a young Dong-ju meeting Jong-il and looking for a videotape at home. There, Jong-il asked Dong-ju to keep it a secret if he found the tape. Suddenly, Kang-san teleported to another place, surprising everyone in the old building. At the same time, Yang-da showed up with his gun pointed at Myung-nam. The police were on their way too. Yang-da asked Myung-nam to surrender for the kidnapping, but Hae-young tried to protect Myung-nam by saying she planned it. Dong-ju asked Yang-da to trust them and promised to find Kang-san and explain everything about his novel and the situation. Before leaving, he assured Myung-nam that he would help clear his name and asked Yang-da to protect him. So, after Dong-ju left, the police showed up at the old building to set up an ambush. At that time, Dong-ju went to Sopyeong Lake, but he couldn't find anyone there. He tried to call Kang-san, but the call didn't go through. Meanwhile, Kang-san was lying in a construction site where Chan-seong's bookstore used to be. On the other hand, Myung-nam was taken to the police station, and Hae-young once again claimed that she was the one behind the kidnapping. Yang-da also told the police that Hae-young admitted to planning the kidnapping, and Myung-nam didn't resist arrest. Back at his house, Dong-ju couldn't find Kang-san. He checked the security camera and saw a man coming, suspecting that Kai might still be trying to find the video recording. Dong-ju thought that Ta-man and the others didn't have the recording and were both searching for evidence in the murder case. Now, let's go back to 1995. Chan-seong went to a locker where Hanul kept his backpack. Hanul had told him there was a videotape in it. After closing the bookstore, Chan-seong got Hanul's backpack and started watching the video recording. Suddenly, Kang-san arrived, and Chan-seong asked him to help Hanul, who was in trouble. Soon after, Jong-il came to the shop, so Chan-seong told Kang-san to leave through the back door and gave Hanul his backpack. Chan-seong also put the recording in his pocket. In the present, Dong-ju called his mother to ask about his father's videocassettes, but she couldn't really remember if her husband had the tapes Kang-san mentioned. On the other hand, Kang-san finally realized he was in the year 2022. He confirmed it by asking a convenience store clerk. Dong-ju tried calling him, but Kang-san didn't answer until he checked his cell phone after receiving a video from Yin-hee showing him suddenly appearing at Sopyeong Lake. When Yin-hee called him, she said someone had uploaded the video online, but not everyone believed it except her. Now let's get back to Dong-ju, who was trying to reach Kai. There, he sent another message to him through his novel fan forum, hinting that Kang-san was still alive. At the same time, Dong-ju anxiously waited for Kang-san to come home. When Kang-san returned, he asked about what happened at Sopyeong Lake, but Dong-ju said he'd tell him at the right time, which made Kang-san angry, and he went inside the house. On the other hand, Kai seemed to have read Dong-ju's message. The next day, Kang-san went to Woo-jung's book cafe. When he saw her, memories from 1995 flashed back when he shared ice cream with a young Woo-jung, and they seemed to have a liking for each other. In the present, the grown-up Woo-jung greeted him and showed a photo of her high school friend who looked a lot like him. Kang-san was shocked to learn that the photo was from 1995, and memories of the past flooded back when he and Woo-jung took a photo together in the school garden, promising to take another one in 2000 for the new millennium. Kang-san, regaining his memory, suddenly got a headache, and the meteorite stone he used to carry lit up. Seeing that, Woo-jung panicked and quickly got some medicine for him. When she returned, she asked about the photo, and he explained that he was the same young man in it, but she didn't believe him, thinking it was the result of an accident he had experienced. It was only when Kang-san mentioned his full name that she finally believed him before he left the book cafe. Meanwhile, Dong-ju was having a fan meeting when he got a message from Kai, passed to him by a middle school student who asked for his autograph. In the message, Kai mentioned a place where they could meet. Now let's go back to 1995. Hanul was still in high school and often visited Chan-seong's bookstore. Chan-seong was busy making toys for Dong-ju. When Chan-seong saw Dong-ju, he hugged his little son, which made Hanul jealous because he didn't have parents. Soon after, Young-suk arrived and asked Hanul to be Dong-ju's tutor when she found out they were from the same school. As Hanul got to know Dong-ju, He asked Hin Newell to come outside and pointed to the sky because his name sounded like sky. As a gift, Hin Newell gave a toy car to Dongju. Now let's go back to 2022. Kai, who had just left Dongju's fan meeting, felt like someone was following him. So he changed his appearance, and when he passed the person following him, they didn't recognize Kai. Meanwhile, Dongju accidentally bumped into a man named Ju Hunjong, who had a novel of his. Dongju noticed a cross tattoo on the back of the man's hand. Hunjong asked Dongju where he could meet God. Dongju found it strange but replied that God is everywhere. Just as he was about to leave, Hunjong grabbed his hand and said he'd been waiting for the author of the novel for 27 years. Then he apologized and left, leaving Dongju surprised. In an unexpected turn, let's go back to 1995. Hunjong and his colleagues were chasing Kang San until he suddenly disappeared into a time dimension. At that moment, Kang San was at Sopyeong Lake, where he contacted Hyein Soo and told her he remembered his name. She said she'd check his family name. In the interrogation room, Byung-man showed Myung-nam the wooden cross he took from Yong-sant and asked about it. Myung-nam said it was a cross necklace and wondered if Byung-man wanted him to lie again. When Byung-man left the room, he told his colleagues that Myung-nam wasn't the killer of Do-hyun or Jong-chol. Now let's switch to Young-suk's workplace. Dongju met his mother there to learn about his father's recording tapes. Young-suk mentioned that a church pastor had once asked her for a cassette tape. She used to go to church to find solace after her husband's death, and the pastor told her about the church's orphanage for abandoned children. When Dongju asked about his father's accident, Young-suk told him about a hit-and-run incident that Chan Seong had experienced on a quiet and rarely used street that wasn't even on his way home. Sadly, the police didn't catch the person responsible for the hit-and-run. After Dongju went back to his mother's house, he found a box with his father's belongings and a toy car from Hin Newell. He also remembered how his father used to make different toys for him. Now, back in the interrogation room, Ha-young mentioned that she had often seen Myung-nam hanging around her house for the past 2 years. So, one day, Jong-il came home drunk and started hitting his wife and Ha-young. Ha-young tried to run away, and that's when Myung-nam stepped in and took her to the hospital. Ha-young, showing her bruises, admitted that she often met Myung-nam, someone she could really trust. She wanted to find out what really happened to him and her father. Meanwhile, Kang San was walking by the roadside when he remembered what Dongju had told him, that the problem wasn't with his memory, but with the time itself. Shortly after, Dongju, driving his car, spotted Kang San and stopped. When Dongju approached Kang San, the young man suddenly hit him and asked why he was in 2022. Dongju suggested they get into the car to talk, but Kang San refused to go home and ran into the middle of the road. Dongju chased after him, trying to save him from an oncoming car. Somehow, they both ended up at Dongju's house, looking shocked. Soon after, Dongju rushed to his appointment with Myung-seok and Ta-man at Fortuna Cafe that night, promising Kang San that he would explain everything when he returned. Afterward, Dongju hopped in his car and headed to Fortuna Cafe. Meanwhile, Myung-seok, who was already at the cafe, got some info from Ha-young. She told him that she had met Dongju when he was a little kid because his dad had a bookstore near his school. Back at home, Kang San was alone, holding his shoes and reminiscing about when Hin Newell gave them to him as a birthday present. Shortly after, Kang San went outside and someone took a photo of him. On the other hand, Kai also seemed to be keeping an eye on Kang San from a distance. Kang San then went to Woo Jung's book cafe to prove that he was the same Kang San she knew 27 years ago. He apologized for not keeping their promise to take a photo together in the year 2000 to mark the new millennium. In that moment, Woo Jung teared up hearing his words. At Fortuna Cafe, Dongju, who had just arrived, asked one of the employees, Ha-young, to park his car. When he entered the cafe, Myung-seok introduced him to Ta-man. Dongju apologized for being late, and employee Ha-young noticed a tracking device under Dongju's car. Inside Fortuna Cafe, Ta-man discussed Dongju's novel, which had a writing style similar to a book called The Old Man and the Sea. It was about a frail old man battling a group of sharks in the ocean. According to Taman, the old man in the story will lose, but Dongju believes the old man has found a big fishbone that will reveal the real truth. When Dongju returned home, he asked Yanbei, who was on patrol, to help him find the case files related to Chan Xiang, who died in a hit-and-run accident 27 years ago. Yangda agreed to assist in the search. At the police station, Hyen-su showed a photo of Taman and his friends from 27 years ago, when they were students at Taegon High School. There she asked if they were the ones responsible for the homeless person's death at Sopyeong Lake. At that time, Myeong-nam admitted that he couldn't see the perpetrators clearly because it was dark by the lake. Then, when she showed Hae-nul a photo and asked if he had tried to stop the attackers, Myeong-nam didn't recognize him until Hyen-su showed Hae-nul's face at that time. Myeong-nam noticed the face and had a moment of recognition, but then he claimed he had never seen him before. Hyen-su also asked why he had sent her a novel by Dongju, and Myeong-nam explained that Detective Hund Minu had guaranteed her as a trustworthy police officer. Hearing this, she remembered Min-woo, her former colleague who had tragically died in an accident while chasing a criminal 2 years ago. In a conversation with Min-woo in the past, Myeong-nam talked about being framed and serving a 25-year prison sentence. Min-woo then informed him that Myeong-nam's name wasn't on the list of suspects in the murder of Do-hyun, a loan shark. He explained that information from several other loan sharks about the homeless murder case was handled by his superiors, including Byung-man. However, when Min-woo looked at the case file, he found several odd things. Myeong-nam then revealed that after leaving prison, he had been waiting near Jong-il's house to seek revenge. One night, he witnessed Do-hyun visiting Jong-il's house around 1 in the morning. Suddenly, another man appeared and carried Do-hyun's unconscious body into a car. Myeong-nam admitted he didn't dare report it because people wouldn't believe a former prisoner like him. Because of this, he suspected that Jong-il might be behind Do-hyun's disappearance and feared that Jong-il would frame him again if he went to the police. Myeong-nam urged Min-woo to check the CCTV around Jong-il's house, but the next day, he knew that Min-woo had died. On the other hand, at home, Dongju met Kang-san. There he showed Kang-san a picture of Kang-san from when he was in high school. Dongju admitted that he hadn't told Kang-san everything he knew about him because Kang-san had lost his memory. He wanted to make sure all the information he gave was right. Dongju also talked about Kang-san's older brother, who was still hiding somewhere. He mentioned a novel called God is Dead, which told the story of everything Kang-san's older brother went through in the past. Then, Dongju confessed that he had taken the manuscript of that novel from Kang-san's backpack. He did this because he wanted Kang-san to read it, even though he had tried to stop him. He said he didn't want Kang-san to find out that Hae-nul had killed someone. The next day, Dongju couldn't find Kang-san at home and tried to call him, but his phone was off. In the afternoon, Dongju went to a bookstore. Then, Kai called and asked him to meet on the building's rooftop. Kai was curious about why Dongju had Kang-san's backpack. Dongju explained that he met Kang-san, who had the backpack because of a car accident. He also asked Kai to trust him with Kang-san, who had somehow teleported from 1995 to 2022 and still had amnesia. Unfortunately, Kai didn't believe this story. Dongju suggested that Kai and Kang-san could start fresh somewhere quieter, and he even offered to share some of the money he made from the novel. But Kai refused, fearing that the novel's publication could endanger Dongju's life. Kai then asked for a recording tape, but Dongju said he didn't have it. If he did, he would have given it to the police because it was the same tape that got Chan Xiang killed by someone who wanted it. Hearing that, Kai got angry, asked Dongju not to meddle in his problems, and eventually apologized before leaving. Meanwhile, at Fortuna Cafe, Hae-gyong was reading an article about suspicions of plagiarism in Dongju's novel. At that time, Jeong Chol's wife wanted to sue the author because of it. Then, at the publishing office, Myung-seok told Dongju that Jeong Chol's family wasn't willing to make amends, but Dongju insisted that the novel was entirely his own creation. Meanwhile, Kang San was at Sopyeong Lake and came across a big barrel near the lake's edge with a skeleton inside. As he held the skeleton, he had a vision of a man with a cross tattoo, wielding a knife and killing the person in the barrel. Shortly after, a woman approached Kang San and he informed her about the discovery, and she reported it to the police. Not long after, Hyun-soo arrived at the scene, surprised to see Kang San there. One of the detectives informed her that Kang San was the first to find the body. Soon after, Hyun-soo examined the barrel to see if there were any clues indicating that the person who killed the one in the barrel was the same person. They found an ID card belonging to a high school student named Hae-nul. Later, Hyun-soo talked to Kang San, asking him about the skeleton they found. He mentioned seeing a hand holding a knife with a cross tattoo on it, but unfortunately, she didn't believe him and told him to go home. On his way home, Kang San passed Byung-man and felt like he had seen Kang San before. The next day, Byung-man met with Min-woo's wife, Soo-hyun, and told her that before Min-woo passed away, he had supposedly found CCTV footage around Dong-yeol's house on the day Do-hyun died. Byung-man asked Soo-hyun for help in searching for that recording at home. Meanwhile, Dong-ju was at home when he got a call from Yongdae, who couldn't find the case file on Chan Seong's death in the National Archives of Young Korea. Dong-ju then went to see Young-suk to ask who had handled the hit-and-run case. While at the office, Yongdae, curious about the case file, questioned his superior. His superior explained that no one had closed the case and wondered why the file couldn't be found. He mentioned that in 1995, Jong-il had taken over the murder case. On the other hand, Hae-gyong went to Ta-man's office regarding the discovery of a body in a barrel at Sopyeong Lake, suspected to be Hae-nul based on the ID card found. In the evening, Jong-nam came to Fortuna Cafe and asked Hae-gyong for help in finding Ta-man's weaknesses. He suspected Ta-man of being involved in Jong-chol's murder and Sang-woo's disappearance, especially after hearing about the discovery of Hae-nul's skeleton. Then Jong-nam revealed that he didn't want to end up like his friends, including the homeless man who was Ta-man's past victim. The next day, Hae-gyong went back to see Ta-man. She shared Jong-nam's plans because she wanted to prevent Ta-man and the others from fighting and hurting each other. Hae-gyong also handed a photo to Ta-man, showing Jong-chol's wife being intimate with another man. She suggested that Ta-man could use this photo to pressure Jong-chol's wife into dropping the plagiarism lawsuit against Myung-siak's publishing company. During this conversation, Ta-man also showed Hae-gyong a photo of Kang San, saying he felt like he recognized Kang San's face but couldn't remember where from. Hae-gyong, too, couldn't recall the young man in the photo. Ta-man mentioned that he had been keeping tabs on this young man who had lived with Dong-ju after Dong-ju had hit him. He was still trying to figure out the connection between Kang San and Dong-ju. Switching over to Kang San, he returned home and remained silent, even after Dong-ju told him about the discovery of a skeleton on the shore of Sopyeong Lake. Kang San just stayed quiet and cried, leading Dong-ju to try and comfort him. Meanwhile, at the police station, Byung-man and Hyun-soo were discussing the discovery of a skeleton in a barrel, when he remembered that Hae-nul had a younger brother who also vanished around the same time. Then he checked his notes and found the name Kang San listed as Hae-nul's younger brother. Hyun-soo mentioned that the person who found the barrel with the skeleton was also named Kang San. They compared a photo of Kang San from Blind Man's old documents with a photo on Hyun-soo's cell phone and were surprised by the resemblance. However, Byung-man explained that the two Kang Sans in the photos were not the same person because they lived in different years. Back at home, Kang San shared with Dong-ju his vision of a man with a cross tattoo killing the person in the barrel. He mentioned that the cross was the same as the one at the church orphanage where he and Hae-nul grew up as children. At that time, Dong-ju suspected a connection between the orphanage and the murder case at Sopyeong Lake. Then he suggested that they search for video recordings and the man with the cross tattoo to uncover the truth behind the murder incident that happened 27 years ago. Soon after, they decided to search the internet for information and discovered a photo of the priest and a picture of the cross inside the church where Kang San lived. Kang San mentioned that the cross was always present in their room. The man who claimed to be a priest at the orphanage treated the children very poorly. At that time, Kang San, Hin Newell, and many other kids were locked in a penance room and subjected to torture. Sadly, some children never came out of that room alive. There were rumors that all the children in the orphanage either died or were sold. When Kang San and his older brother were locked up, they were not given any food or drink. They were only beaten until they repented. Dongju, who listened to the story, praised Kang San for growing up to be a kind person despite such hardships as a child. Dongju hoped they could find evidence quickly to reveal the truth so he could admit that his novel wasn't entirely his own creation. He couldn't do it before finding evidence because people wouldn't believe him. Kang San then revealed that he didn't think of Dongju as a fraud. Rather, he saw him as a writing partner, especially after discovering that Dongju had written the second part of the novel. Shortly after, Haegyong arrived, and Dongju hurriedly asked Kang San to hide so that she wouldn't uncover his true identity. In the living room, Haegyong gave Dongju a drink and expressed her desire to meet the person living with him. She also mentioned that Ta Man had placed a tracker on his car, but her employees had already taken care of it. While showing a photo of Kang San, Haegyong admitted that she wanted to meet him because he resembled someone she knew. However, Dongju explained that there are many people who look alike in the world, so she finally apologized for her intrusion and said her goodbyes before heading home. After she left, Dongju discovered a flash drive inside an empty drink bottle. When they checked its contents, both he and Kang San were shocked to find a list of influential people that Ta Man had bribed over the years. Dongju also mentioned that if this list were to become public, it would create a major scandal in Korea. Meanwhile, Haegyong's bodyguard, named E, questioned why she had shared information about Ta Man's bribery list with Dongju. She explained that Dongju needed protection to face Ta Man, and that she also owed a debt of gratitude to Dongju's father. She praised Dongju for his courage and resilience in the face of Ta Man, expressing confidence that he would reveal everything at the right time. She then asked about Hin Newell's whereabouts, but E apologized, saying he couldn't disclose that information to ensure Haegyong's safety. In the past, Hin Newell went to Chan Seong's bookstore, but changed his mind because it was temporarily closed. Suddenly, young Haegyong pulled him into a small alley and told him that Chan Seong had died in a hit-and-run accident the night before. She warned Hin Newell to hide in her family's villa because Ta Man's father had sent some thugs to find him, as they discovered that Hin Newell had a videotape showing the murder of a homeless man at the lake. Hin Newell figured that Chan Seong had died because he left behind the video recording, so he needed to find out about the tape immediately. He also wanted to meet Kang San, who might have gotten a video cassette from Chan Seong. However, Haegyong informed him that Kang San hadn't gone to school that day, so he rushed to look for his younger brother. At that moment, Haegyong witnessed two men forcibly taking Hin Newell into a car and driving away. Soon after, they arrived at an empty building, and a tattooed man named Hun Jong ordered his colleague to kill Hin Newell. However, Hun Jong ended up killing his own colleague and took Hin Newell's student card. He then set Hin Newell free and told him to forget everything that had happened so he could start a new life with a new identity. Then, Hin Newell asked about Kang San, and Hun Jong said he had witnessed a miracle where God saved him. In the present, Kai, who remembered these events, realized that Kang San was indeed still alive. At that moment, Mang Nam appeared to meet him. Meanwhile, at the police station, Soo Hyun arrived to provide CCTV footage that she had found in her son's desk drawer, showing what happened in front of Jong-il's house. At that time, Hyun-soo and her team watched the footage, which revealed Do-hyun arriving at Jong-il's house at 9 p.m. However, at 1 a.m., an unconscious Do-hyun was picked up and placed in a car by an unknown man. Mang Nam's car then followed the one with Do-hyun. After viewing the recording, Hyun-soo believed it was a good evidence to question Jong-il. But Byung-man disagreed, saying the video alone couldn't prove that Jong-il was responsible for Do-hyun's death. They needed to locate the man in the video and obtain his testimony. Soon after, Detective Kim Wook-jin entered the room, and Hyun-soo asked him to investigate the video. Afterward, Wook-jin was seen leaving the police building. Meanwhile, at Kai's house, Myung-nam asked about Kai's true identity, which was Hae-newell, after seeing a picture shown by Hyun-soo at the police station. Kai admitted that he was indeed Hae-newell, but had adopted a new name after the events that occurred 27 years ago. Myung-nam then shared an incident from 2 years ago, when he witnessed 2 individuals dropping Do-hyun's body on a mountain. At that time, he followed them and discovered Do-hyun hanging. Myung-nam tried to save him, but unfortunately, Do-hyun had already passed away. So, Myung-nam hurried to meet Kai and inform him about the incident. Myung-nam, who had just been released from prison, was worried about being accused of murder again because he had touched Do-hyun's body. As they talked, he realized that he had dropped his cell phone on the mountain while using it as a flashlight. This making Kai to go up the mountain to search for Myung-nam's phone and place a photo of Ta-man and the others inside Do-hyun's shirt pocket. When he returned, Kai informed Myung-nam that he had directed the person responsible for Do-hyun's murder to Ta-man and the others. He reminded Myung-nam to admit that he had only followed the car carrying Do-hyun up to the mountain gate. Back in the present, Myung-nam felt guilty for meeting Kai that night and indirectly leading Kai towards revenge. Meanwhile, Kai apologized to Myung-nam for not being able to help when he was wrongly accused of the murder. There, Myung-nam tried to comfort Kai and encouraged him to move forward peacefully with his life. Meanwhile, at the police station, Jae-soo appeared confused as he searched for the video recording flash disk at Jong-il's house. He couldn't find it on Detective Wook-jin's desk. When he contacted Wook-jin, his colleague said he might have left the flash disk on his computer or on Hyun-soo's desk. Hearing this, he asked Wook-jin to return to the office right away. At the same time, Wook-jin was waiting for Jong-il to hand over the flash disk containing CCTV footage. There, he told Jong-il that he wouldn't assist him any further. Hearing that, Jong-il, in a casual tone, threatened to expose Wook-jin to his boss, accusing the detective of illegal gambling and selling police information to gambling establishments. This would lead to Wook-jin being sentenced to prison and his elderly mother falling ill. Turns out, Yongdae secretly recorded their conversation and then contacted Dongju to inform him about what he had witnessed. There, Yongdae revealed that Jong-il was the one who had taken Chan Seong's death file, revealing that Chan Seong had been killed by someone. Upon hearing this, Dongju immediately started searching for information about Jong-il, who was now a council member. He began to suspect that Jong-il was the detective who had visited his father's bookstore on the day his father died. Not long after, Hyun-soo arrived, and before discussing the reason for her visit, she asked if she could use the bathroom. In there, she secretly took Dongju and Kang-san's toothbrushes. When she came out of the bathroom, she showed a photo of Kang-san and Hae-newell, who had disappeared 27 years ago. Recently, the police had found a skeleton with Hae-newell's identity card, suggesting that Hae-newell had been found dead. Kang-san tried to convince her that his older brother was still alive because he was the same person in Hyun-soo's photo and had somehow traveled to the future. However, Hyun-soo didn't seem to believe Kang-san, even though Dongju confirmed that claims. While they were still arguing, Hyun-soo received a call from Byung-man, who asked if the CCTV footage in front of Jong-il's house had been copied. She said she had given the video to Wook-jin, who apparently hadn't copied it yet. After the call, Byung-man began to suspect that Wook-jin might be working with Jong-il. As for Hyun-soo, she quickly left Dongju's house without saying goodbye after receiving orders from Byung-man to go to Myung-nam's laundry. On the other hand, Byung-man tried to contact Myung-nam but couldn't reach him. Meanwhile, a masked man entered Myung-nam's laundry. Soon after, Dongju turned to Kang-san and shared his suspicions about Chan Seong having a videotape of the homeless man's murder. In the past, after Kang-san left the bookstore, Chan Seong had attempted to hide the recording tape. There he met Jong-il, who was still a police detective at the time. Unfortunately, on the day of his death, Chan Seong hadn't had a chance to move the tape from its temporary hiding spot. Dongju, however, had no idea where his father had hidden the tapes. Kang San then apologized, feeling responsible for Chan Seong's death, but Dongju asked him not to apologize. Then he explained that Kang San and Hin Newell were victims, while the guilty ones often avoid feeling remorse until they live comfortably and act as if they've done nothing wrong. While discussing Chan Seong, Kang San mentioned that he had seen the wooden toys that Chan Seong had made for Dongju. This sparked Dongju's memory of a wooden toy car his father had crafted. Then he began to suspect that his father might have hidden the videotape inside the toy. Soon after, Dongju immediately contacted his mother to ask about the wooden toy car, but Young-suk couldn't recall it. She promised to let him know if she found it. On the other hand, Byung-man and Hyun-soo were at the laundry but couldn't find Myung-nam. Eventually, they spotted him injured in his car, making Hyun-soo and Byung-man helping him out of the vehicle. The next day, Jae-soo reported that there were no CCTV pointing at the laundry door. From a distance, Yi contacted Kai to inform him that he was around the laundry following the attack on Myung-nam the previous night. He explained that the attacker had tried to make the victim appear as if he intended to do something unthinkable. On another day, Kang San looked cheerful and said goodbye to Dongju as he headed to meet Woo-jong, his high school friend. Dongju wondered if Woo-jong knew that Kang San had come from the past, and Kang San confirmed it before going downstairs to meet her, who had been waiting for him. During their meeting, Woo-jong gave Kang San some side dishes, and Dongju, watching from a distance, was happy to see him smiling so happily. A little while later, Dongju received a call from Kai, who asked him not to reveal anything about Kang San's past. Hearing this, Dongju explained that Kang San had already remembered his past and intended to find evidence related to the murder of a homeless man 27 years ago. Hearing that, Kai tried to prevent it, fearing for his younger brother's safety. He also asked Dongju to help Kang San lead a normal life and forget about him, as he had become a murderer. Before Dongju could respond, Kai abruptly hung up the phone. Meanwhile, at Tagung Group, Jongnam informs Ta-man about the discovery of a skeleton with Hae Newell's identity card at Sopyeong Lake. Ta-man, who was already aware of this, questions who could have killed Jeong-chol if Hae Newell was dead. Hearing that, Jongnam remains silent. Ta-man then reveals that Jong-il killed Do-hyun 2 years ago, after Do-hyun attempted to blackmail him. Then he hands over a photo showing Jeong-chol's wife involved with another man to Jongnam, asking the prosecutor to deliver the photo to Jeong-chol's wife. At that time, the intention is to persuade her to drop the plagiarism lawsuit against Dongju's novel. Jongnam, seemingly unable to resist Ta-man, agrees to this request. The next day, Myung-seok receives news that Jeong-chol's wife has indeed dropped the plagiarism lawsuit, likely to maintain a good relationship with Ta-man. Meanwhile, when Hyun-soo visits Dongju's house, he asks about her reason for taking their toothbrushes. She explains that she needed them to check Kang San's DNA against the skeleton found at the lake's shore. Curious about Kang San's superpower, she asks him to demonstrate it. During this, she has a vision of herself hugging a blood-covered man, identified as Min-woo, and starts to cry. With this explanation, Hyun-soo finally started to believe in Kang San's abilities. She then asked if Kang San had ever met Hae Newell. Dongju, who was listening, responded that Kang San only recently remembered having an older brother, so he hadn't met Hae Newell before. During their conversation, Hyun-soo also wondered how Dongju could have written his novel when only Hae Newell and others were present. To protect Dongju, Kang San explained that Dongju had based his writing on notes from Chan Seong, who was Hae Newell's friend in the past. Unfortunately, Kang San had lost those notes when moving. Then, Dongju continued, expressing his belief that Hae Newell had given Chan Seong a video recording related to the murder at the lake 27 years ago, which ultimately led to his father's death on that fateful night when Kang San crossed through time. In the past, Jong-il met Chan Seong at a bookstore and instructed Hun Jong to pursue Kang San. When Jong-il discovered a video camera with no tape, he asked about the tape and assumed Kang-san had taken it. There, Chan Seong responded that Kang-san didn't know anything about it and advised Jong-il to leave. Feeling angry, Jong-il attacked Chan Seong and then forced him into a tunnel, causing his death to appear as an accident. In the present, Dong-ju tells Hyun-soo that Jong-il has deleted the records of the hit-and-run accident to hide the truth about Chan Seong's death. He believes that if he can find video footage related to the murder case at the lake, he can uncover the truth about the case and his father's death. That's why he's determined to locate the man with the cross tattoo who killed the person whose skeleton was discovered in the barrel. As they looked into the meaning of the cross, Hyun-soo discovered that it was a symbol associated with a church that had turned into a large cult with 10 branches in Korea and over 100,000 members. This church was involved in illegal activities like extorting money and valuables and running an illegal pyramid scheme. The church was led by the founder and president, An Yoon-mook, who was suspected of being partner in crime to Jong-il. Then, Kang-san asked why the police hadn't arrested them, and Hyun-soo explained that the police needed someone to report them, but members or those who knew about the church seemed too afraid to do so. Shortly after, Young-dae called Dong-ju to inform him that Myung-nam was in the hospital. Meanwhile, Hyun-soo asked Kang-san for help in using his special abilities to find out what had happened to Myung-nam, hoping it would help the police catch the perpetrator. The next day, at Ta-gung Group, Ta-man watched a video of Kang-san appearing by the lake and compared it to some photos. Soon after, Jong-nam arrived and informed him that the police had getting the CCTV footage from in front of Jong-il's house, which could be used as significant evidence to expose Jong-il in Do-hyun's murder. Ta-man then showed photos of Kang-san from both the past and the present, pointing out that they looked identical, revealing that Kang-san is Hae Newell's younger brother. However, Jong-nam disagreed, insisting that the two photos showed different people. Later, at a restaurant, Jong-il was waiting for Hae-gyeon to join him for lunch, but she canceled due to a stomachache. Then, Jong-il decided to eat alone when Kai contacted him, claiming to have poisoned his steak. Panicking, Jong-il rushed to vomit his food and called for his bodyguards. Soon after, a car pulled up near the restaurant, and Jong-il mistakenly got into it, thinking it was his bodyguard's car, even though his actual bodyguard had just arrived outside the restaurant. Soon after, Jong-il found himself in the car driven by Kai, and he was clearly startled. Panicking, he wanted to know who had sent Kai. Then the car stopped at a location where he joined them and drugged Jong-il, causing him to lose consciousness. At that time, Jong-il's bodyguard attempted to reach him, but had his phone turned off by E. Then, they moved Jong-il to another vehicle, and the bodyguard reported his master's disappearance to Young-san, who then informed Hyun-mook. There, Hyun-mook requested that they not involve the police and instead rely on divine guidance. Meanwhile, Hyun-soo and Kang-san were on their way to the hospital. Hyun-soo recalled Dong-ju's words about Kang-san's ability to see the pain, sadness, and despair of people. While it could be a blessing to those he helped, it also posed risks if he couldn't control his power. Upon arriving at the hospital, Kang-san held Myung-nam's unconscious hand. In his vision, he witnessed Myung-nam and Do-hyun being mistreated by Jong-il, even glimpsing his older brother. Then, Kang-san released Myung-nam's hand and was shocked to see his own hand seemingly fading away, making him leaving the room. Then, after feeling calm, Kang-san shared with Hyun-soo that he had seen Myung-nam at the laundry, where something making Myung-nam afraid. Hyun-soo then showed Kang-san the CCTV video from in front of Jong-il's house. Kang-san noted that the body posture of the man in his vision looked alike with the one in the video, but he needed to see the man's face in that CCTV to be sure. He also mentioned that Myung-nam had been trying to assist someone hanging from a tree. Later, at the police station, Hyun-soo informed her colleagues that there was no match for the missing person data regarding the skeleton found in the lake. Furthermore, the skeleton did not belong to Hae Newell. She then had a private conversation with Byung-man, during which she shared the details about Kang-san. Byung-man found it challenging to believe all of this. Meanwhile, at the publishing office, Dongju received news from Myung-seok that the person who had accused him of plagiarizing his novel had withdrawn the lawsuit. Myung-seok also offered an apology and gave Dongju a watch as a gift. At that time, Dongju found Myung-seok's unusually kind behavior quite strange, as Myung-seok was not known for apologizing or giving gifts. After their conversation, Dongju left the office with the gift. Shortly after, Young-suk called Dongju to inform him that she had given the wooden toy car made by Chan Seong to Yongdae's father when they moved. Hearing this, Dongju hurried to meet Yongdae. Unfortunately, the toy car was not at Yongdae's friend's house. Then they discussed the matter near a park, where Dongju gave the watch from Myung-seok to Yongdae. Without much thought, Yongdae put on the watch, unaware that Myung-seok was eavesdropping on their conversation through a hidden device in the watch. During their conversation, Dongju mentioned his search for video recordings in the wooden toy car, as well as the story of his father's death connected to the Sopyeong Lake incident. Yongdae then showed a video he had recorded when Wook-jin met with Jong-il. In a hurry, Dongju quickly sent the video to Hyun-soo, making sure that Byung-man and Oh also learned about Wook-jin's secret actions. Around the same time, Jong-il's bodyguard arrived to report that his boss had gone missing. Meanwhile, Jong-il found himself in an old building, waking up to discover that his hands were tied to a chair. Before him stood Kai, who he recognized as Han-nul. There, Kai urged Jong-il to confess his actions and reveal the true perpetrator of the Sopyeong Lake case in front of a camera. Threatening to kill the council member if he refused to cooperate, Kai asked Jong-il if he planned to leak the video to the media. At that moment, Jong-il clarified that he didn't intend to destroy Kai, and then he proceeded to reveal the names of the real culprits behind the murder at Sopyeong Lake. They are Ta-man, Jong-chol, Jong-nam, and Sang-woo. However, Kai pressed further, wondering why Jong-il had also killed Do-hyun and Chan Seong. Initially reluctant, he eventually admitted to these murders and confessed that he had framed Myung-nam for the homeless man's murder at the lake. Meanwhile, back at home, Kang-san shared with Dongju the moment he saw his older brother holding Myung-nam's hand at the hospital, and it surprised Dongju. However, they received unexpected news about Jong-il's disappearance, possibly at the hands of Kai. Dongju quickly hung up and asked Kang-san about Kai's whereabouts, but Kang-san didn't have the exact address of his older brother's house. Dongju explained that Kai had killed Jong-chol, and they needed to find him before Kang-san's older brother got involved in something terrible again. Meanwhile, Kai continued his interrogation of Jong-il, asking about Sang-woo, who had disappeared 7 years ago. There, Jong-il revealed that Sang-woo, who was drunk, disappeared after meeting Ta-man. On the other hand, Byung-man's team tracked Jong-il's location through his cell phone and rushed to find him. There, they discovered Jong-il's empty car with his cell phone inside. Then, Byung-man received a message from Kai revealing Jong-il's whereabouts and instructed them to head to that location. Meanwhile, in his car, Ta-man received a video message confessing Jong-il's actions and revealing the location. Then, he immediately ordered his man, Wang Soo-chol, to go to Jong-il's location. At Fortuna Cafe, Jong-nam and Hae-gyong watched Jong-il's confession video, and it sent Jong-nam into a panic, fearing that his past crimes might come to light if the video spread. Ta-man, who was also at the cafe, looked relaxed and congratulated Hae-gyong because they now knew that Han-nul was still alive. At the place where Jong-il was held, Byung-man and Hyun-soo arrived ahead than Cheetah. There, Hyun-soo quickly untied Jong-il, while Byung-man reviewed the recording of Jong-il's confession left behind by Kai. He informed Jong-il that he needed to accompany them to the police station to provide a statement. Soo-chol, who saw this, reported to Ta-man that the police had taken Jong-il into custody. Ta-man assumed that Kai had sent messages to him and the police simultaneously, meaning the police likely had the confession video. Then he asked Jong-nam, the chief prosecutor, to use his influence to free Jong-il. Soon after, Hyun-soo contacted Dongju and shared the news that they had found Jong-il alive, relieving Dongju of the fear that Kai had killed the council member. She also mentioned the discovery of a video recording at the kidnapping site containing Zhang confession about various crimes related to the Sopion Lake case and Qian Xiang's murder. At that moment, Dongju felt that Kay didn't intend to kill, but rather want to make all the wrongdoers admit their guilt. Thanks to Kai, they now had evidence of several past murders. Back at Kay's place, he was eavesdropping on Zhang and Byungman's conversation in the interrogation room through a listening device he had secretly placed in Zhang shoes. The detective presented surveillance camera footage from in front of Zhang house and played the recording of Zhang confession inside the old building. At that time, Zhang claimed that he had been forced by Kai into making the false confession. Suddenly, a man entered the room to free Zhang. Oh, who had discovered this development, quickly contacted Jae-soo and instructed his men to tail Zhang as he left the police station. At the same time, Jae-soo reported that Zhang had gone to Fortuna Cafe to meet with Ta-man and Zhang after tracking his car. Meanwhile, Kai continued to listen in on their conversation at the cafe. There, Zhang asserted that Zhang should take responsibility not only for not killing Hae-nul in the past, but also for creating a video confession. But Zhang said that if someone is forced to confess on video, it shouldn't count as a real confession in the eyes of the law. Hearing that, Ta-man expressed his concern not about the confession's validity, but about the fact that Zhang had killed many people. Zhang admitted to the murders, claiming he did it for all of them, and explaining that Qian Xiang knew too much about the incident, leaving him with no other choice. Then he emphasized the need to take care of the confession video issue as soon as possible. After returning home, Zhang got word that his wife was heading to church to pray. At the same time, Jae-soo reported Zhang arrival back home. Zhang, feeling anxious, contacted Wook-jin to express his frustration about the leaked CCTV footage from in front of his house being given to the police. However, Wook-jin didn't respond directly and instead mentioned that their colleagues were aware of their collaboration. Then he requested some money to stay hidden. Wook-jin also asked about Cheetah's whereabouts, the man who helped Zhang on the night of Du-hyun's murder and had tried to harm Myung-nam. He explained that the police were watching Zhang house, and if Cheetah were caught, they would both be in danger. Then, after receiving this information, Zhang contacted Cheetah with a sinister request to eliminate Wook-jin. Shortly thereafter, the lights in Zhang house suddenly went out, and Su-chol quietly approached and killed him. Meanwhile, Kai overheard the moment when someone was killing the council member. At the same time, Cheetah met Wook-jin in the apartment parking lot and tried to persuade the detective to leave, but Wook-jin refused, leading to a physical fight between them. Then, in the morning, Wook-jin had brought the handcuffed Cheetah to the police station, offering apologies and asking his teammates to arrest him. On the other hand, Dongju, who had just woken up, received a message from Young-suk that his wooden toy car could be found at his grandmother's house. Meanwhile, Kang-san went to the hospital to hold Myung-nam's hand again in the hope of discovering his older brother's whereabouts. Turns out, Kang-san's unique sight ability allowed him to locate Kai's house, and he warmly hugged his long-lost brother. Their reunion was filled with tears of emotion after their long separation. Kai then welcomed Kang-san into his home, but warned him not to tell the address to anyone else. He also told that Kang-san should avoid go back because it could put him in danger. However, Kang-san expressed his desire to stay by his older brother's side and use his powers together. Then, Kai emphasized that the Hae-nul Kang-san knew no longer existed and hoped that his younger brother could embrace a new life. Kang-san, having traveled through time to find his brother, was determined to remain together. Meanwhile, Dongju and Yongdae reached Dongju's grandmother's house and began searching for the recording cassette hidden within the toy car, which had been stored into a flower pot. Despite removing all the dirt from the toy car, they were initially unable to locate the tape. However, Dongju eventually discovered the tape and a letter when he pulled out a drawer at the front of the toy car. Around the same time, Myung-seok overheard Dongju and Yongdae's conversation. When he returned to Dongju, he read a letter from his father that contained valuable advice. The letter encouraged Dongju to show love and kindness to those in need, be compassionate towards Young-suk, and always share happiness with others. In his office, Myung-seok looks like he's happy as he realized he could take over Ta-gung Group with Dong-ju's assistance. Meanwhile, at the police station, Wook-jin testified that Jong-il had ordered the killing of Do-hyun and the attempted murder of Myung-nam. He'd also revealed that Cheetah had seen the video recording in front of Jong-il's house on the night of Do-hyun's death. At that time, Cheetah claimed he had only seen Do-hyun's lifeless body in Jong-il's house before helping Wook-jin transport the body to the mountains. Besides that, Cheetah provided information that the attempted murder of Myung-nam was also done by Jong-il. Meanwhile, Dong-ju and Yongdae appeared to be watching a videotape from a cassette they had discovered in a toy car. Myung-seok, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation, finally learned that Ta-man was the culprit behind the homeless man's murder at the lake. Soon after, Dong-ju informed Hyun-soo that he had found video evidence of the Sopyeong Lake incident from 27 years ago. After the call, she shared this positive news with Myung-man. On the flip side, Oh got a phone call telling him that someone had killed Jong-il. Meanwhile, at Dong-ju's place, Yongdae wondered how Dong-ju managed to write a story that matched the video recording so perfectly. There, he finally confessed that he had borrowed the novel from the kid who got beaten up in the video. Even though it was a bit late, Dong-ju said sorry and planned to come clean about it publicly. But Yongdae reassured him, saying that everybody makes mistakes, and he's proud of Dong-ju for owning up to it. Later, when Dong-ju was home alone, he got a sudden call from Yongdae with the news that Jong-il had passed away. Soon after, Hyun-soo and Byung-man arrived at Jong-il's house to investigate his death. At the same time, Kay was seen taking Kang-san home and giving him his phone number, asking him to take care of himself. After Kai continued on his journey, Soo-chol secretly trailed behind his car. Then, when Kang-san got back home, he received a call from Dong-ju informing him that Jong-il had passed away. Dong-ju also mentioned that he found the videotape and they could now uncover the truth. Hearing that, Kang-san felt happy. Meanwhile, out on the street, Kay realized that someone was tailing him, so he stopped to get a good look at the person following him. Not too long after, Kang-san had called Kai from a public phone and warned him that Dong-ju had found the video recording of Sopyeong Lake. There he asked Kang-san not to get caught up in the Jong-chol murder case. After they hung up, Kang-san felt sad because he had to part ways with Kang-san once again. Then, when Kang-san got home, he met Dong-ju and told him that he had found his older brother and would do anything to keep him free because he believed Kai was a good person. In that moment, Dong-ju shared the same feeling and hoped that Kay would never be caught. On the other hand, Hyun-soo, who was with Byung-man, suspected that Myung-nam had some connection to Hae-newell based on information Kang-san had given her. She remembered how Kang-san had seen Myung-nam rescuing the man hanging from the tree. At that time, she had a feeling that Myung-nam was present at the scene of Do-hyun's death, and Hae-newell might have messed with the place where the crime happened. After discussing their plans, they headed to a container house near Myung-nam's place, but they found it empty. So, Byung-man asked Hyun-soo to find out who lived there. While at the office, Hyun-soo, who had conducted an investigation, reported that the owner of the container house was a 46-year-old librarian named John Chung-gun, whose father was suffering from dementia in a nursing home. Meanwhile, at Fortuna Cafe, Ta-man informed Hae-gyong that he had discovered Kang-san was Hae-newell's younger brother, who had a unique ability to vanish. He also mentioned that Kang-san had just met Hae-newell that day, surprising Hae-gyong. Shortly after, Kai arrived, playing a video recording of Jong-il's confession, thanking Ta-man for killing Jong-il, which made Ta-man a prime suspect in previous homeless murder cases. At that moment, Ta-man tried to intimidate Kai, whom he recognized as Hae-newell, by accusing him of killing Jong-chol. However, Kai casually responded that Hae-newell was dead and that it's impossible to kill people. As Kai was leaving, he bumped into Jong-nam on the cafe's steps. Then, after Kai left, Ta-man showed up and slapped Hae-gyong when he realized that she had been helping Hae-newell, who happened to be his first love. At that moment, she got angry and gave Ta-man a slap in return, telling him to leave. Just as Ta-man was about to strike her again, Yi intervened to stop him. Meanwhile, Hyun-soo met Dong-ju outside the house, wanting to get video footage of the Sopyeong Lake incident and asking about Han-nul's whereabouts. There, Dong-ju claimed he didn't know where Kang-san's older brother lived, and even if he did, he wouldn't tell her. Back at home, Kang-san watched the videotape and saw his older brother being attacked by a group of people, which made him furious and lightheaded, causing him to faint. Dong-ju witnessed this and immediately called Soo-yeon to come check on Kang-san. After the examination, Soo-yeon explained that Kang-san's weak pulse was due to psychological distress, and he needed a full examination. When Soo-yeon left, Hyun-soo was still waiting for Dong-ju to give her the tape, but he said he would make it public the next day before sharing it with her. The next morning, Kang-san woke up and found Woo-jong in the kitchen preparing breakfast. She mentioned that Dong-ju had asked her to come because he was concerned about leaving Kang-san alone. Meanwhile, Dong-ju was doing a live interview on a TV station, showing a video of the Sopyeong Lake incident from the past. There, he explained that the teenagers involved in the abuse on the video were Ta-man, Jongnam, Jongchol, and Sangwoo, when they were 19 years old and still in high school at Taegung High School 27 years ago. Shortly after, Dong-ju shared that he had found the videotape among his father's belongings, and he believed his father wanted him to uncover the truth about a murder case that had been concealed for 27 years, with the help of a detective who had been rewarded by the authorities for framing Myeongnam as the murderer. He also mentioned that his father had obtained the recording from a student who had witnessed the incident and had been beaten in the video. Even though the case had been closed, Dong-ju hoped that the police would reopen the investigation and clear Myeongnam's name. He also admitted that the novel God is Dead wasn't actually written by him, but by a student who had witnessed the murder. He had found the manuscript and edited the story before deciding to publish it under his own name. After the interview, many journalists were waiting for Dong-ju in the TV station's lobby, so Hyun-soo contacted him to pick him up and cover him from the journalists' interviews. Outside the building, Dong-ju received news from Yongdae that Young-suk wanted some time alone in the park to calm down after watching the broadcast. Still, she seemed calmer because Dong-ju had informed her before going on TV. On the other hand, Hyun-soo expressed her gratitude to Dong-ju for his national TV broadcast, which led the prosecutor's office to issue arrest warrants for the wrongdoers. She admired Dong-ju for his courage in admitting his mistakes and looked forward to reading his next novel. Shortly after, Dong-ju arrived home and found Kang-san waiting for him to have dinner together. The following day, Ta-man and Jongnam turned themselves in at the police station. Meanwhile, Myung-seok held a press conference to apologize for his older brother's scandal and promised to resolve the issue as soon as possible. At the same time, Dong-ju met Hae-gyong to return the flash drive containing the list of bribes committed by Ta-man. There, Dong-ju explained that Hae-gyong needed the file more than he did. If he exposed it, she would be in a difficult spot and considered an accomplice to Ta-man. But if she handed the file to the police, she would be seen as an informant. Before leaving, Hae-gyong told a person who had the videotape of the Sopyeong Lake incident from Ta-man's house and given it to Han-nul. She also apologized because the video recording had led to Chan Seong's death. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Byung-man questioned Ta-man about Sangwoo, who had vanished after meeting him. Ta-man said he had forgotten. Then, the scene shifts to 7 years ago. So at that inmum, Sangwoo had visited Ta-man at the office, and they had gotten drunk. There, Sangwoo confessed he couldn't find peace after the Sopyeong Lake incident, but Ta-man didn't think it was important because it happened a long time ago. Hearing that angered Sangwoo, who said Ta-man should have never killed the homeless man. Before leaving, Sangwoo threatened to confess everything to the police, leading Ta-man to attack him with a bottle, making him dead. Fast forward to the present, Hae-gyong showed up at the police station, claiming she had witnessed the Sopyeong Lake incident. Then she handed over a flash drive containing a secret record of Ta-man's bribery activities. After their interrogation, Ta-man and Jongnam were released and went in front of the media. There, Ta Man apologized and announced his resignation from managing Taegung Group. Meanwhile, at the Taegung Group office, the board of directors held a meeting and eventually appointed Myung-seok as the new company head. The next day, in front of his house, Kang-san, who had just returned, removed the hurtful message on his door directed at Dongju for supposedly stealing the manuscript of the novel God is Dead. And from a distance, Han Jong seemed to be keeping an eye on Kang-san. As for Byung-man, he was in front of K's house with Hyun-soo when he received an information message containing the car plate number of Jong-il's killer and a recording of Jong-il at the Fortuna Cafe before he was murdered. Shortly after, Kai appeared and Hyun-soo asked him if he had met Myung-nam on October 5, the night Do-hyun died. There, Kai admitted he didn't remember well, but he mentioned that Myung-nam rarely visited him at night. Byung-man then asked about Kai's whereabouts on the night Jeong-kol died, and Kai replied that he was probably at home because he usually went straight home after work. Meanwhile, at Dongju's house, Yongdae arrived to meet his friend, but Dongju was out. Suddenly, Han Jong came to see Kang-san and handed over one of his shoes that had been left behind in 1995. At that moment, Kang-san was shocked, and Han Jong knelt down, confessing to a grave sin and acknowledging that Hanmuk was a bad person. Soon after, Kang-san touched Han Jong's arm, triggering a flashback of when he was pursued by Jong-il, who ordered Han Jong to kill Hae-nul and Chan-seong. He also saw Hyunmuk telling Han Jong to kill Hae-nul and Kang-san. After the vision, Kang-san unexpectedly teleported to a church where Hyunmuk was giving a lecture to his followers. Yongdae, who witnessed this, quickly contacted Dongju, who knew Kang-san, and rushed to the church. Inside the church, all of Hyunmuk's followers were shocked when they saw Kang-san, thinking that their priest had successfully summoned God. However, Kang-san, filled with anger towards Hyunmuk, threw the priest against the wall and attacked him with his strength. Not long after, Dongju had arrived at the church at that moment and attempted to intervene, but Kang-san, overwhelmed by anger, accidentally struck Dongju, causing him to hit the wall and lose consciousness. Kang-san then heard Dongju's faint voice calling out to him, making him release Hyunmuk. Around the same time, Hyun-soo and Byung-man arrived at the church, and Kang-san noticed his hand starting to disappear before suddenly teleporting. Back in 1995, Dongju discovered a meteorite in the forest and gave it to Hae-nul and Kang-san, who were searching for him. There, Dongju explained that the stone was a shooting star he had seen the previous night, so he asked Hae-nul, whose name meant sky, to keep it. When Kang-san held the meteorite, he saw it light up, and on their way home, Hae-nul, holding Dongju, referred to the stone as a good luck charm. Back in the present, Kang-san woke up at Kai's house, while Dongju regained consciousness in the hospital and immediately asking about Kang-san's whereabouts. Hyun-soo, who had been looking after him, informed him that Kang-san had disappeared. Then, when they returned to Dongju's house, they discovered a video recording of Han Jong's arrival. Dongju admitted that he had met a man with a church cross tattoo. Yongdae then presented the shoe that Han Jong had given to Kang-san. Soon after, Dongju took Kang-san's other shoe and told that the shoe they were holding was from the past. He suspected that Han Jong was the one who had pursued Kang-san and witnessed him disappearing, leading Han Jong to believe that Kang-san was God. Dongju also mentioned that when he met Han Jong at a fan meeting, the tattooed man showed that he felt sorry. On another occasion, as Dongju drove Hyun-soo home, he shared information about Kang-san, who had suffered abuse at the hands of Hyunmuk at the church orphanage. Some children had even gone missing after entering the repentance room. Then, Dongju expressed his belief that the dark events from the church orphanage's past were still happening today. At 2 in the morning, Kai suddenly called Dongju to inform him that Kang-san was with her. Dongju urged Kai to take Kang-san and hide before the police could find them. After hearing that, Kai didn't say much and hung up the call. Meanwhile, at the police station, Jae-soo reported that they had located the murder suspect Jong-il's car at a car dump. When he and his team arrived, they didn't find Jong-il's fingerprints on the car, but they did discover discarded gloves belonging to the perpetrator. On the other hand, Byung-man went to a nursing home to meet Chang-jun's father, Jong-yul, and asking about Chang-jun. The elderly man replied that his son was dead and asked if Byung-man had come with Hae-newell. Meanwhile, at Kei's house, Kang-san picked up a meteorite from the table and told his older brother that it was the same meteorite that had saved him the night he was chased by Han-jong until he met Dong-ju. Before Kang-san headed home, he expressed his desire to live with Kang-san. Moving on to Dong-ju's house, Young-suk arrived with food for her son. She returned the money Dong-ju had given her because she knew he needed it to pay a fine related to his novel troubles. At that time, Dong-ju apologized, but Young-suk simply expressed her desire for him to be happy. On another occasion, Dong-ju visited the tunnel where his father had died and witnessed Han-jong laying flowers at the site. Han-jong then telling how Jong-il had killed Chan-seong in the tunnel and offered his apologies to Dong-ju, expressing his deep regret ever since. Dong-ju also asked about the missing children from the orphanage, causing Han-jong to break down in tears upon hearing the question. The next day, Han-jong finally met with Hye-in-soo to confess to all his crimes, as requested by Dong-ju. Back at home, Dong-ju was explaining Han-jong's story to Kang-san when Yang-dae unexpectedly showed up. Yang-dae told us that Myung-seok secretly put a listening device in his watch when he found out that Dong-ju wanted to reveal the So-pyeong Lake situation to try to bring Ta-man down. Yang-dae admitted that he had found out about the bug from a friend when he considered selling the watch, thinking Dong-ju needed the money to pay a fine to his publisher. Dong-ju then communicates with Myung-seok through his watch, telling Myung-seok to be careful in case. Soon after, Ta-man discovers that his younger brother is aware of Dong-ju's plans to expose the So-pyeong Lake case. Myung-seok, upon hearing this, appeared frustrated, knowing that Ta-man would do anything to get what he wants. The next day, Kang-san asked if Dong-ju genuinely intended to inform Ta-man about Myung-seok. Dong-ju explained that he only wanted to challenge Ta-man. When Yang-dae returned home, Kang-san informed Dong-ju that he would stand by his side. A few days later, the police found the bodies of the children who were killed at the church orphanage because Han-jong gave them information about it. On the other hand, Hae-gyong was finally able to meet Kai, whom she had been searching for. The following day, Byung-man visited Kai's house and explained that he had met Jong-yul. He apologized to Kai for suspecting him all this time, as he had been searching for the young man he had met 27 years ago to discuss the So-pyeong Lake case. Byung-man felt sorry and hoped that Kai could lead a happy life. A few days later, Kang-san left Dong-ju's house to be with Kai and left a message for Dong-ju. He explained that he intentionally didn't say goodbye because their parting was temporary, expressing gratitude for everything Dong-ju had done for him. In the evening, Myung-seok met with Ta-man's secretary and asked him to report about Sang-woo's murder case to avoid suffering the consequences of Ta-man's mistakes. In the past, the secretary and Jong-man had apparently assisted in moving Sang-woo's body, while Su-chol had buried it. A while later, Kai suddenly contacted Dong-ju and requested a meeting at his house. He explained that Kang-san was planning to turn himself into the police, hoping to lead an honorable life with him in the future. Meanwhile, at the airport, Hye-in-soo and other police officers apprehended Ta-man, who was attempting to leave the country for the murder of Sang-woo. On another note, Myung-seok seemed to have taken over Ta-man's position at Ta-gum Group. Meanwhile, Jong-nam, who had just returned from abroad, was also arrested by police at the airport in connection with the murder of a homeless man 27 years ago. At that time, Oh explained that the case had been put on hold when Jong-nam left Korea, but with his return, the police resumed their investigation since Jong-nam had spent 2 years working in another country, which meant the statute of limitations hadn't expired. In the end, Dong-ju picked up Kang-san from Kai's house. 2 years later, Dong-ju republished his book titled Miracle Brothers. Now Kang-san was attending college and he visited Kai in prison. He also often come to the book cafe to meet Woo-jong. Right now, Dong-ju and Kang-san seemed happy living together in Kai's container house. The series ends. The moral lesson from this series is if you've got a superpower, keep it a secret and don't write a book about it, unless you want your life to turn into a chaotic circus.